Happy Monday, trade professionals. Welcome back to another Simply Trade news roundup with Lalo, Andy. Hi, everyone.
Good morning.
And myself, Annik. Glad that you're here. We're going to talk on some pretty important topics. I know last time I said that we did not want to bring China in, but you know what? This time, I feel like I manifested this or something, but there was more China in it. So I don't know what the heck. Weird. But here we are. There's
the second largest economy in the world. You're always going to have U.S. and China. So it is what it is. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? There's some good in it too. But we're starting with some good old fashioned forced labor. And should I say it's not really old fashioned because it's still happening in 2024. And so the U.S. basically takes a bold step to block imports from Chinese cotton traders and warehouses. So I think there's from 26 Chinese cotton traders from warehouse facilities to eliminate goods made with forced labor from the U.S. supply chain. The companies were added to the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act entity list, restricting the import of goods tied to the ongoing genocide of the minorities in China. I can't pronounce that. It's Xinjiang region, right? Something like that.
Xinjiang.
Okay, perfect. I nailed it. I think 26 is a pretty big number here. Did this just that must have taken a while to even figure out this was under forced labor, correct?
It goes on weeks and months, usually, as far as there's reports, and then people start investigating in, and it comes from imports where CBP will take a sample of the shipments when they're doing exams on them, and literally do DNA testing to see if it's the cotton that comes from that Uyghur region. The other thing, though, is that there are 26 new entities added to the list, so that has upped it now to, I believe, a total of over 65 or around 65 entities specific into this cotton Uyghur situation. So that's the thing is folks, what this is saying is basically the U.S. government has added 26 entities to the list. What does that mean to you? You need to go back through and start vetting again. You need to develop, if you're in the compliance arena, the international transportation or supply chain arena, you better get aligned with your purchasing and sourcing group. Y'all need to get together with that. That's action number one. Number two, you need to update any of your spreadsheets, your databases, or anything else with this latest list. Go to the government website. I've got it actually over here on another thing here, and I'll pull it up here in just a second. But dang, I thought I could get it up here as far as this listing quicker than two shakes of a dog's leg, and I'd doggone if I didn't mess this up. Anyway, the point being is you need to update. This is the action you need to do. You need to update your list of the list of people that the U.S. is saying they're using forced labor. Your goods are going to get stopped, seized, or returned. So, if you don't want problems with that, work with your sourcing group so that you can, avoid the problems in the future.
I think one of the things I want to point out is, ironically or coincidentally, let's say, this week we had a really nice session. We were contracted by a government entity, a regulatory agency here in the U.S. to provide training for them specifically for forced labor. It was a great training. We had well over 300 people, government agents there on the training, and I just wanted to say that I wanted to add this little bit of information, and this may actually help what happened now by adding these other entities to now make 56 entities on the restricted list. So this is a very interesting stat that I want to provide, just to put things in perspective as to how serious this situation can be. So there was a year-long study, actually a little more than a year-long study, but Stratton Moore's law, that they were applying DNA sciences. Basically, they were doing isotopic testing on products. What they did is that they pulled 822 products from major brands and retailers. They literally went and pulled them off the shelf. 822 different products, not 822 items, but 822 different products. They pulled them from the shelves.
Wow.
They did isotopic testing, and this is the conclusions that they found. 19% of those products had originating cotton from the Xinjiang region. And this is like unbeknownst to these people, I shouldn't say people, to these companies that are manufacturing and importing these products. Either it's unbeknownst to them or they were lying, right? Okay, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. It's unbeknownst to them. Okay, obviously, we have to give them the benefit of the doubt. So unbeknownst to them, it was that. But here's a kicker here. So check this out. So 19%, like I said, had originating cotton from Xinjiang region. Okay, 57% of those claimed that their products were 100% U.S. made. So anyway, I mean, those are just simple examples of how serious this can be, and how just clueless we may be. It's just that this is being weaved into the cotton spun and being diluted. And I'm not going to say diluted. It's being diverted, through transshipments or different places around the world where, manufacturers have no idea that this is happening. But through isotopic isotopic testing, DNA testing, etc., this is going to get a lot more. I mean, the reason we were doing this training for the government officials is because we were training them for the importer's perspective as to trying to help them understand what the importer is going through. They wanted to know that. They wanted to see the importer's perspective, because these are the enforcers. These are the people who are actually enforcing forced labor. And so this helped a lot on the training. It was a very long training. It was an 8-hour training. And so they got to understand what it is that the importer is going through. Now, this may help them reach out and partner with the community to help them enforce this a lot better, or maybe even educate the public and the importing communities.
Well, and with that, again, the issues it comes across, this would be a great example of, folks, if you're in leadership, this is one of those things, you're not wanting to see your company do things, in a bad way or nefariously or whatever. The point being is you've got to reach out and look at this as a team effort, representatives from different areas of the company, so that you can go through and again, vet things appropriately. The cost of the item is, especially in today's world, the lowest cost is not the primary driver. And when you look at this, your cost of the goods in manufacturing is one aspect. What's usually not looked at holistically is what's the added transportation due to the distance of where the factory is? What's the additional duties and taxes? What's the additional risk in vetting processes that you have to go through for some of this kind of stuff that you go through? Is it really worth it? If you add up all these ancillary costs, are you really saving anything?
Not a plug for anybody or any of that, but we will have software providers that have been interested in coming on our show and talk about their software solutions. We have one that's coming up that is actually a open source product that it's free for anybody to use. So we're very excited to have them come on, only because there's the small mom and pop shops, that just they can't afford these very expensive products. But we'll talk more about that as it comes up. But we're excited to bring that to everyone.
So the next one is, and this is funny. So the US and China held a historic meeting in Geneva to discuss artificial intelligence risks, mainly. Very interesting, I think, because as we know, AI has been upcoming. I wouldn't see it's upcoming. It's up there. It's growing. We all use it. But military and what is it? Yeah, military and, kind of in the upper governmental area, that's where it gets a little bit tricky because you don't know what other countries are doing. So the US and China met basically to discuss what their kind of regulations are, where they stand. And it did say that, now let me go real quick because so both countries are competing to shape rules on AI with hopes of exploring potential global standards for AI governance. But it did say that Washington's technology protection policies would not be up for negotiation. Where do you think US and China will be with artificial intelligence?
Companies need to be looking at that as they're implementing things. One, there is a problem with AI, with companies being able to find people to fill positions. So this is going to help make individuals more productive. But at the same token, you also have a scenario where these systems need to be configured. They need to be maintained. They need to be looked at from a problem solving perspective if it's doing something right, wrong, or whatever, or development of new applications. Well, that requires people to know what they're doing. So there's evidence that more jobs are going to be created than lost.
Right.
So we will move on. And this one is on the mask and gloves. Well, the U.S. boosts domestic mask and gloves makers through tariff increases on Chinese imports. So basically what President Joe Biden did was he increased tariffs on Chinese goods, which is expected to bolster U.S.-based medical mask and glove manufacturers, providing a potential lifeline to a sector that struggled after the initial surge during the COVID-19 pandemic. To me, maybe this was a little late because, I feel like this should have been done a little bit sooner, but I guess because we needed them, right? So
that was what the deal is that in the midst of the pandemic, there was such a surge or demand for gloves and masks and, things of that nature. It's the PPE, personal protective equipment, the PPE industry, which the article makes reference that it's a $14 billion a year industry that, the U.S. did not have the capability, nor did, just about anybody else to, fill the demand that was needed. There were a lot of companies that set up factories in the U.S. to start producing gloves and masks and whatnot, as well as China. And we needed them so badly that these were exempt from any additional duties or tariffs. Now, with the stabilization of the pandemic situation and all that, it's now a scenario where trying to allow U.S. factories to get back up and running, as well as, I guess, be punitive towards China in this particular realm.
And this, I don't know if this falls into, I don't know why we didn't cover it in the news this week, but in another effort to make America more competitive, Biden this last week also added tariffs for electric vehicles coming from China specifically. Yeah, so it not only electric vehicles, but like steel, aluminum, all that kind of good stuff. And he's threatening to make it up to 100% tariffs or duties, extra duties or tariffs.
The challenge here is that the Biden administration is pretty much mandated trying to get the zero emission vehicles out there. So people are having to revert to the electric vehicles. So putting tariffs on the Chinese manufactured EVs is where he was going with on some of that. Well, China really doesn't import EVs into the U.S. Very few of them, to my knowledge. But it's the batteries. Also, the batteries that are manufactured, the raw materials of the batteries, there'll be additional duties on all of that. And with that, if I'm not mistaken, China has the majority of the, natural resources locked up as far as all that goes for the batteries and all. So it's just going to drive up the cost of EVs. So really the mandate for zero emissions, and then this, as they're going through, he's trying to look at it and promote more U.S. manufactured EVs or North American EVs being manufactured. But it's conflicting because there's so much of the components are from China, one way or another. The components of the EV itself and the components of the battery, where a lot of batteries are manufactured there too.
Right. Well, what I read in this past week or heard also through the news was the concern is that like Chinese EVs, which again we've talked about this in the news several times in the past, but very nice looking cars also. They're not just junk cars or anything, and apparently they're of good quality as well, but because of government subsidies, these cars have been seen to go as low as $12,000 in other countries. So that's the fear that the U.S. has, is like, wait a minute, you cannot sell a $12,000 car, an EV here in the United States. I mean, after you import it, of course, it'll probably end up at 14,000 or whatever. I don't know, whatever the case may be. So the proposal was to make it at about 100% tariff. I mean, of course, that'll raise it up, double. You would assume, but anyway, so that's the effort as to like the danger is there, or the threat is there, not the danger. The threat is there that they may come in.
Basically dump them because it costs more to manufacture it versus that sell price. So that's, you're right. That's what the danger is. Although also what's driving down the Chinese EV cars, the cost was driving them down is they're making their own batteries. They have their own materials. So they don't have to go through multiple things. So it's actually cheaper for them to manufacture, but also they are trying to, if you will, dump them into the U.S., meaning that they'll sell them for less than what it costs to manufacture them because the Chinese government is subsidizing the factories.
Oh yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to add that because it was a big news here for this week, especially being an election year. So that's obviously.
Thank you for sharing. I also wanted to mention that we have an upcoming Russia sanctions course, which is June 20th with George Thompson. And it's just 1 hour long, $39. Go get it now because the price will increase next month. And it's going to be a really good Russia sanctions update. And I feel like it's something everyone has to do because there's so many updates and you just got to stay on top of it. Anywho, a fun fact is that the world's largest warehouse is over 18 million square feet. That's bigger than 300 football fields. Crazy, huh? Also, just wanted to give a shout out. I did not know that women comprise 41% of the supply chain workforce. That's amazing. Women are doing great things. 41%. That's awesome. I think that's great. Almost at 50, ladies and gentlemen, doing great things. And of those are 28% directors. Thank you so much for staying. I hope this was informative. And sometimes we're all over the place. I mean, there's so many things to cover and so many things to bring in, but I hope it sparks some light on some areas on the trade world. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us on social media or email us, whatever you prefer. And we hope you have a great day. It would really mean a lot to us if you would share this podcast just it helps us to keep going. And so we hope to see you next week, Monday. Have a great week. Bye.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.